rebellion. Andor Episode 8 once again ratchets up the tension as Cassian is cooling his heels inside an Imperial labor prison, and as the ISB continues to tighten its grip in its search, our old friend Saw Gerrera turns down an opportunity to join the Rebel Alliance. Directed by Toby Haynes, Narkina 5 shows more Imperial oppression and why Rebel characters like Luthen and Rael actually want them to crank it up a notch. We're gonna break all that down, plus a bunch of new Easter eggs that we spotted. But before we get to all that, we have to warn you. You know how it works. We're gonna spoil everything from here on out, so if you don't want spoilers, please leave. Go on, get...
Alright, move! Go! Down the ramp! Down the ramp, now! Moving! Stay right there! On program!
Okay, we're past the spoilers, so let's get right to it. Cassian is in prison on Narkina 5 under an assumed name, and it sucks. The prison, not the name. It's definitely more of a forced labor camp than anything else, so as he's coming to terms with his new status quo, Supervisor Deidre Miro and the ISB are still trying to hunt him down, not knowing that he's actually already in their system. Miro and the ISB drill down on information provided by former Deputy Inspector Syril Karn, who's doing his damnedest to wind up working for them by submitting a bunch of fraudulent paperwork. As all of this is happening, Bix Kalian tries to send a message to Cassian because his adoptive mom Marva's health is failing over on Ferrix, but that just brings the Empire down on her and her friends, and now she's on the run. And while all of this is happening, Luthen and Rael visit Saw Gerrera at his hideout on Segramilo and tries to get him to join the larger operation, and Saw refuses, and Luthen gets all shady and dark and says that he wants the Empire to get worse because that will encourage people to join the rebellion. People like Saw. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. That was a lot to lay on you all at once, so let's just start at the beginning and recap everything in detail a little more to show how we wound up here. So, like we said before, Cassian spends this episode getting acquainted with his new life as an Imperial prisoner on Narkina 5. They can't wear shoes because that's why. And that is how the Imperial Guards keep order in this here work camp, just straight up frying anybody who steps out of line or steps out of their cells. It makes that magnetic floor prison from Face Off look like a minimum security country club. The floor is actually worse than lava. It's electricity. I think that's worse than lava. I don't know. Right away, we meet Andy Serkis's Gulp Shitto character, Kino Loy. He's a prisoner with 249 days left on his sentence, so he's not putting up with any shenanigans from newbies like Keef, which is Cassian's fake name for now. Actually, I lied. It is kind of a crappy name. Cassian joins Table 5 on Kino Loy's production floor, and it's clear right away that these prisoners are being worked to death. Literally, they're making some kind of mechanical components that require a lot of physical labor to assemble, and that's with the whole table pulling their weight. They're constantly competing with other tables to produce the most. Whomever produces the least each day gets zapped by that shitty electric floor, so they have tons of motivation to put out as many components as absolutely possible every single day. It's a high-pressure, high-stress environment. When Cassian first arrives, he's hit with the realization that this is going to be dank, ferric nightmare because he's been sentenced to 6 years of this. The episode goes to great lengths to show us that it is very unlikely that Cassian is going to escape from this place. Not only do the prisoners have zero privacy since their cells don't actually have doors, the floor zaps are cranked up to a maximum, so when a fellow prisoner loses hope and steps out of his cell on purpose, the floor just fries him on the spot. So at this point, unless he gets out of this place, there is a better than strong chance that he is going to die here. After all, he himself was a replacement for a prisoner who didn't make it. I mean, aside from the fact that we know that he dies in Rogue One, there are a few glimmers of hope for Cassian getting out. He spotted prisoners making hand signals at each other between the glass hallways, so maybe they have some kind of secret plan in the works. And then, of course, there's the very likely possibility that Miro and the ISB track him down and whisk him off to who knows where, though that could very well be more of an out of the frying pan, into the fire type of situation. Some kind of ISB intervention seems very likely because Miro is hot on Cassian's tail. She had a hunch that a bunch of equipment thefts throughout the galaxy were not random crimes, but rather the carefully planned work of a secretly organized insurgency that is slowly assembling people and tech to eventually stand against the Empire's might. And that hunch, which we know is true, just got the green light to become a special investigation, so Miro is free to go wherever she wants and bother whomever she wants. And of course, the first person she decides to bother is our old pal, Syril Karn. Karn is supposed to be focusing on his new cubicle job at the Imperial Bureau of Standards, but instead of filling out TPS reports about pipe fittings and safety walkways for Imperial military facilities, he's been using this new gig to submit quasi-fraudulent paperwork regarding one Cassian Andor in hopes of getting our hero in trouble as revenge for costing Syril his security job on Morlana 1.
Just trying to clear my name.
One would think you'd want to leave Ferrix as far behind as possible.
One would be wrong.
Despite initially giving Karn a bunch of shit For doing this, Miro eventually realizes that he has some value as he provides some info that proves immediately helpful. She tells him to stop submitting fraudulent reports that attract the attention of the ISB, and that she'd put in a good word for him with his bosses at the Bureau of Standards, that Syril has been a good little boy, and I'll give him a raise or some cookies or whatever. And that is when Syril makes his pitch.
Service to the Empire. You just said it. Can one ever be too aggressive in preserving order?
Miro's like, that's cute, kid, you can go back to work. But the seed is planted, Karn is not going to let up, and when Miro's investigation hits a wall, he's going to be the guy to help push it through. We also get a scene inside the ISB briefing room where yet another member of the ISB brass tries to give Miro the business for her investigation, but Major Partagaz steps up and publicly announces his belief in her theory of a growing rebellion and his support of her continuing investigation. Hey, that's nice. We basically never see Imperial bosses do stuff like that, so great work, Partagaz. Anyway, they have the Starpath unit that Cassian originally stole, and they know that Cassian Andor was the guy who stole it, and now all they have to do is, find Cassian Andor. Meanwhile, back on Ferrix, Cassian's adopted mom Marva's health is failing fast, and Bix Kalian throws caution to the wind trying to contact Cassian via hidden rebel communications. On Coruscant, Luthen wants to answer the call, but his assistant, a.k.a. says, no, that is very stupid, and that would immediately bring the Empire down on them, and she's totally right. And of course, Bix's transmission leads Miro and the ISB straight to Ferrix, and the episode ends with her getting ready to interrogate Bix, and she's not going to be gentle about it. That's not how they do interrogations at the Empire. In the end, Luthen and a.k.a. don't respond, instead trusting that Vel and Cinta will complete their mission, which is of course to assassinate one Cassian Andor before he can lead the Empire back to them. It turns out that they're also on Ferrix, hoping that Cassian shows up. Vel eventually leaves, sad that Cinta wouldn't join her, but Cinta stays put, refusing to give up her mission.
Mon is working.
Well, there's much to be done.
Oh, I don't think you're on the menu tonight, eh? The Senator is pitching politics, not charity. Saving the Empire from the Emperor.
As all of this is happening, Mon Mothma is still doing her thing on Coruscant. This time, that means having yet another swanky soiree for the political movers and shakers. As her husband Perrin is working aggressively to get as f***ed up as possible on what appear to be gummy worm and Prosecco Boilermakers, Mon mentions that she needs Senate votes to stave off yet more overreach by Emperor Sheev Palpatine. Emperors are kind of known for overreaching. That's sort of how that thing works. It's not long before Tay Kolma shows up. That's her friend and possible co-conspirator from her homeworld of Chandrila, and Mon Mothma's family members are starting to be a little annoyed that this dude is just hanging around all the time. These rebel insurgencies aren't going to plan themselves, folks, even if it looks a little suspicious. Anyway, Mon Mothma is having trouble moving like 400,000 credits and is looking for help from Tay, but new banking regulations are making it tougher and tougher to move large amounts of money around, probably because the Empire wants to make it tough for any dissenters to do, exactly what Mon Mothma's trying to do here. Of course, before they get very far, they are interrupted by Mon Mothma's daughter, who's basically like, this guy's sure hanging around a lot, and then she awkwardly leaves, so they can commit a little bit of light treason in the middle of a crowded dinner party, which honestly seems like kind of a bad idea. Anyway, Leda obviously knows that something is up, but she's probably got the wrong idea. She thinks that her mom is banging an old friend from high school behind her dad's back. Really what they're doing is dabbling in some light conspiracy and treason, working together to move money around to help what will eventually become the Rebel Alliance. Now, it seems likely that Leda's going to accuse Mon Mothma and Tay of having an affair, and since what's really going on is super duper punishable by death, Mon is likely going to have to admit to these claims and preserve the secret. She could, of course, deny all the accusations across the board, but it's doubtful that her teenage daughter would buy that. It just goes to show you how much Mon Mothma is sacrificing for the rebellion. She's not just putting her life on the line, she's actually driving a massive wedge between herself and her immediate family, who don't even know what she's doing. They just think she's kind of a jerk.
Anton Krieger.
He's been probing the Imperial Power Station at Spellhouse. He's found a weakness in the defenses. It may take some time to work up, but he's got an angle.
The man is an ox. Slow and stupid.
And strong. I want you to hear his plan.
And now for that last scene between Luthen and Saw Gerrera. Not all that different from the one that we see him occupying on Jedha in the first act of Rogue One.
What have you really brought me? Cargo pilot. Borgullet will know the truth.
Luthen is like, hey man, I've got some gear that I'd like to sell you, and Saw is interested until he hears Luthen's asking price.
I'll take all 3 deflectors. How much?
Well, you meet with Krieger, they're free. You don't, I'll take them elsewhere.
I work alone.
That's what I'm trying to change.
I'm not going to put my people at risk for someone else.
We need to pull together, Saul.
We can deduce that this Anton Krieger guy is another rebel type about to mix it up with the Empire, and he needs some air support, something that Saw's group can provide with at least the X-Wing they have parked outside. But Saw is not having it. Krieger is a dum-dum, he says. I mean, my words, not his. He's concerned that joining rebel cells will just doom everybody to failure, but Luthen's point is exactly the opposite, and if they don't join up, they're all doomed anyway.
Whatever our final version of success looks like, there's no chance any of us can make it real on our own.
Saw's answer is still no, and offers to buy the gear that Luthen wants to give him, which also doesn't work, and that's when Luthen reveals his real plan, something that he's kind of hinted at over the course of the last few episodes.
We need the Empire to help. We need them angry. We need them coming down hard. Oppression breeds rebellion.
So the Imperial pressure that came after the Aldhani heist is precisely what Luthen hoped would happen. As the Empire begins to tighten the screws on the entire galaxy, they're actually setting into motion even more rebellion throughout the Empire. The Rebel Alliance, when it eventually comes together, will use this as one of its main tenets.
The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
So there you have it. That's why Luthen wants things to get worse, and he's not alone in that, and great news for him because it seems like the Empire is going out of their way to oblige him.
Talk to me. Problems with another inmate? I'll know before you do. Losing hope? Your mind? Keep it yourself. Don't ever slow up my line.
All right, now it's time for the Easter eggs that we found, and here is what we got. As former Deputy Inspector Syril Karn is getting grilled by ISB Supervisor Miro, we can see clearly that the ISB is recording the whole conversation. And we know this because of these security cameras, which we also saw in A New Hope when Han, Chewie, and Luke took over the Death Star's detention block right before they rescued Princess Leia. This episode marks the second time we've seen any kind of toilet situation in Star Wars, which we see when Cassian is getting the tour of his cell. The last time we saw a Star Wars toilet, it was aboard the Razor Crest in The Mandalorian Season 1. Disney Plus. Great for Star Wars, great for Star Wars toilets. Obviously, Saw Gerrera is kind of big for an Easter egg. This is a character who's popped up again and again. He was trained in insurgency during the Clone Wars by Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano. He met the Ghost Crew in Star Wars Rebels. He meets Cal Kestis and Kashyyyk in Jedi Fallen Order. And of course, he meets his end in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Also on Segra Mila, we see Two Tubes, which is the alias of the rebel Benthic, who has a twin brother named Adrio. Both of them were still working with Saw when they first appeared in Rogue One. Now my big question is, where is Moroff and Bib's cousin Beezer Fortuna? And what about the Borg Gullet? I want more screen time for these weirdos, especially Moroff. Show Moroff right now, you cowards. Now, if you watch this episode very closely, you might have spotted a brief glimpse of Andy Serkis. Now, you probably know him as Gollum, or King Kong, or Ulysses Claw, or Caesar the Ape, or Baloo the Bear, or Captain Haddock, the Raging Alcoholic. This is technically Andy's first live-action Star Wars role, but obviously he plays a much bigger role in the galaxy's future as the heavily computer-generated, giant, towering, supreme leader Snoke, who first appeared in The Force Awakens. We were like, who's this guy? And then he showed up in The Last Jedi, and we're like, oh, this guy's crazy. And then, you know what? Let's just leave it there. Let's move on. Can we end this show? I don't want to talk about Snoke anymore. Anyway, what did you think of this episode? Is Luthen Rael's strategy a good one, or is he doomed to fail? Can Mon Mothma actually trust Take-Homa? And when will Moroff get his own Disney Plus series? Hit us with your best theories down in the comments below, or just tell us your favorite of Saw Gerrera's henchmen. I'm Max Scoville. Thank you for watching this episode of Canon Fodder, and for more Star Wars, check out why the Aldhani heist crew should be scared out of their minds at this point. And as always, don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. I'll see you next week. May the Force be with you.